Resolution. Our sole contention is halting Mexico's development. Prior to NAFTA, Mexico was on a path to sustainable long-term development, as Mark Wiesbro, director of the Center for Economic and Policy Research 14 explains. Mexico's program of planned industrial development, domestic enterprise, and rigid social programs brought record levels of growth in the years before NAFTA. From 1960 to 80, Mexico's GDP per capita doubled, amounting to huge increases in living standards for the vast majority of Mexicans. If the country had continued to grow at this rate, as nations like South Korea did, it would be living in European standards today. Simultaneously, Mexico used a gradual approach to open itself to the world market while protecting national industries. As Cordova Brookings 03 explains, following the 1982 debt crisis, Mexico began gradually liberalizing its economy, eventually eliminating trade licenses and simplifying tariffs. During this period, the Library of Congress finds that Mexico diversified its exports, moved towards self-sufficiency in food and most consumer goods, and expanded domestic production. Unfortunately, NAFTA brought this development to a halt, plunging Mexico into the global economy headfirst with no regulation or protection of domestic industry. As Wiesper writes, NAFTA brought Mexico's industrial and developmental policies to an end, enshrining rapidly deregulated trade and investment in a binding agreement. Specifically, Rocha of the Institute for Policy Studies 14 writes that under NAFTA, corporations were granted the legal power to sue the Mexican government whenever it passed programs that could interfere with corporate profits. This resulted in a chilling effect where the Mexican government was effectively blackmailed out of passing further reforms that served the public interest. Instead, NAFTA reversed progress and electrocuted the Mexican economy in two ways. The first is destroying domestic industry. Without any domestic regulation, NAFTA's rapid shift to trade allowed American multinational corporations to quickly take over Mexico's key industries, destroying jobs for the poor and working class. As Rocha writes, NAFTA has unequivocally been a net job destroyer for Mexico, as companies like Walmart have displaced scores of smaller businesses, causing more than 600,000 companies to go bankrupt during the current administration alone. For example, in the agricultural sector, Wiesbro finds roughly 5 million permanent farm jobs were lost due to agricultural monopolies. Thus, he concludes the Mexican unemployment rate has averaged roughly 5% under NAFTA, whereas in the pre-NAFTA age, it was only 3%. Second is creating financial dependency. As Wiesbro explains, because Mexican institutions were still developing when NAFTA was enacted, the deal increasingly tied the country to American investment, meaning any recession would hit Mexico harder, as the U.S. would pull all its money out of the market. Indeed, financial crises in 94, 01, and 08 all had a more severe impact on Mexico than any other country in the region. Reuters 17 verifies that Mexican dependence on America's economy pushed an additional 5 million people into poverty during the 08 recession alone. Worst of all, this dependence means that shocks in the prices of basic goods, which used to be stable, are now highly volatile. Laura Carlson of New York Times 17 finds that under NAFTA, Mexican consumers now pay more for food in general, while price spikes on the international market have pushed millions of the poor into starvation. For these two reasons, Professor Danny Roderick of Harvard University 17 concludes, almost all of the world's developing country success stories, China, Taiwan, Japan, South Korea, avoided rapid globalization and instead used a gradual approach to liberalization, with the government playing an active role in restructuring the economy and buffering it against volatile markets. Wiesbro furthers that since 2000, Mexico's economy has grown at less than half the rate as the rest of Latin America, while most of its countries have implemented developmental policies that cut the overall rate of poverty in Latin America by 1/3. Mexico has made no progress whatsoever. In other words, given Mexico's roughly 60 million people under the poverty line, NAFTA prevented the country from lifting tens of millions of people into the middle class. It's for these reasons that we strongly negate the resolution.